After watching The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, the latest film in the Conjuring universe gives us plenty of teasers towards what storyline we might be seeing in a Conjuring 4. We are already getting spin-offs like The Crooked Man and a Nun sequel, but how does the latest Conjuring film showcase plot points to be developed in the next official sequel? In this video, I'm going to be explaining the potential story ideas for The Conjuring 4, going through everything that was teased in the latest film. This breakdown will also contain spoilers from the Conjuring universe, so if you do happen to be someone who isn't up to date on any of the Conjuring movies, then I would recommend watching this video after you've caught up. But if you want to keep up to date on any of my future content on upcoming films like The Conjuring, then don't forget to support this video by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive into The Conjuring 4's potential storyline. So while there are rarely obvious plot points in the Conjuring movies that are carried forward from one entry to the next, the series relies on character development, foreshadowing, and expanding on hints given in the previous movies that play out in sequels. Ed and Lorraine's battle against the Occultist in The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, saw the demonologist couple successfully getting Arnie Johnson's prison sentence reduced. While that particular story might be over, there are still plenty of takeaways from the third film that should be of importance in the sequel in regards to the characters and notable events. The first element to discuss regarding what could be carried forward is at the centre of the Conjuring movies, and that regards the Warrens themselves. Most of the scary sequences in The Conjuring 3 had to do with Lorraine either reliving what happened or looking at things from the point of view of the occultist. The Conjuring had shown bits of Lorraine's precognitive abilities, which became a main point in The Conjuring 2 against Valak. Much the same, The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It had Lorraine display the power to interact with others through her powers that should be part of the main story in the next movie. This was teased in Lorraine's light-hearted conversation with Sergeant Clay, where she claimed she had spoken to Elvis Presley's ghost, only for this ability to show up when she spoke to the occultist through her powers, and The Conjuring 4 is well placed to make use of this ability as well. Unlike previous movies, this had a highly negative effect on Lorraine, so much so that she took on the role of the murderer when tapping into these moments. What we learn from this is that the next movie is likely to explore Lorraine's lack of control of her abilities, as it's been teased for some time that she can lose herself completely unless she's snapped out of her trance. The Conjuring 3 brought this as one of its main plot points to be resolved in a future sequel. When it comes to Ed Warren, there are also plot points that can be developed further too. The demon summoned by the occultist attacked Ed at the beginning of the movie to trigger a heart attack, from which he continued to suffer throughout the movie. The ending showed that he needed to rely on his medication from now on, with Lorraine looking out for him if he forgot it. This has set up the sequel to focus on the toll that fighting spirits has taken on Ed, as he wasn't fully healthy again by the conclusion of The Conjuring 3. With Ed also suffering injuries in previous movies, the third film has now turned this into a notable aspect that the sequel will have to address. And then of course we come to the climax of the third movie, when Lorraine reminded the possessed Ed of their love by telling him that they were strongest together. It featured flashbacks to their youth during their first date, which is a continuation of the series' practice of adding more to their backstory. The Conjuring 2 had shown Ed and Lorraine dancing to their song, with the third part now playing out their romance in youth on screen. This all adds up in building a fourth movie that delivers on the Warrens' trauma and effects to their marriage through the cases that they have carried out. The release of The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It also had fans celebrating for the most part, but many noted that Ed and Lorraine were far too codependent this time around. To this end, the sequel can fully explore how the Warrens can't do their jobs without one another and their attempts to overcome their protectiveness. The real Ed and Lorraine remained together until the former died, although Lorraine lived for another good decade or so. Therefore, The Conjuring 4 can look into the couple realising that their codependency may get out of hand and resolve to make peace with the idea of either one of them passing away. The last point to make about the Warrens links into all of the other points raised thus far, and it involves Ed and Lorraine's resolve to continue working as demonologists. This is the most important aspect of each of the Conjuring Universe movies, as there are a number of cases still remaining from the days of the real Ed and Lorraine. The ending of the series will be certain when an installment features the couple deciding that they're done, and since this didn't happen in The Conjuring 3, a sequel feels definite. Within the story, the Warrens agreed that their love was strong enough for them to withstand the forces of evil, and they didn't intend to give up. Ed's gesture of bringing a replica of the gazebo the two had their first date at was a way to confirm that the couple's resolve was strengthened after the events of the third movie. So it's likely that things will get worse with other cases before the Warrens decide to quit. But with the Warrens being the primary focus of where this series will eventually go and end, the next points revolve around some of the introductions in the storyline of the third Conjuring movie. The first involves the disciples of the Ram cult that we've seen plenty of times in this universe. The disciples of the Ram are supposedly still active, as Father Kastner alluded to them in The Devil Made Me Do It. The cult was previously seen in both Annabelle and Annabelle Creation as the ones who had brought the Annabelle doll demon to the world and intended to bring more. The Occultist was along the same line, as she promised the demon in her control victims to possess. This makes the cult far too recurring not to be touched upon in The Conjuring 4, especially since Father Kastner directly mentioned them. And speaking of the Occultist, there were a lot of things about the character that were left hanging, such as how she became a witch and her progression towards acquiring the knowledge to summon and control the demon. Father Kastner only mentions this in passing, but it was a hint towards a larger story. It's likely that a fourth movie will dive into how the Occultist got to acquire her powers, with Ed and Lorraine investigating a larger scheme that involves more like the Occultist, and it all being linked to the disciples of the Ram. This can play out much like Valak's story did, as he was alluded to in The Conjuring and fully showed up in The Conjuring 2. It could be a case of setting up an Occultist solo film instead, but I think in The Conjuring 3 it was way too prominent and also linked well into the suffering of the Warrens that it would be a missed opportunity not to go deeper in The Conjuring 4. But alongside this being a likely focus of the plot, it remains to be seen what case the film will follow, but I'm sure that they will focus on building out the story of the Warrens even more, and these aspects will make for an interesting consideration later down the line. I'm sure the writers will also focus on the Warrens' new association with law enforcement too, after seeing the introduction of Sergeant Clay in the latest film, and it will be intriguing to see how they twist the focus of the story. The first two Conjurings were haunted house tales, and the third was more of a mystery set around a real-life court trial, so we'll just have to see what they have in store for us come The Conjuring 4. But that was my video discussing the potential storyline and plot points that could be explored in The Conjuring 4. It will be interesting to see what they end up tackling in the next film, and maybe we'll see even more established characters like Annabelle and the Nun, alongside other spin-offs that will continue to develop the Conjuring universe. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below, along with the Warren cases and stories that you want to see covered. For more breakdown videos on upcoming films like The Conjuring, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.